We're on your radio as well. We're here all the way through until midday with a show full of all the biggest stories and loads for you to get stuck into.
Absolutely. Well, make sure that you get in touch with your views. As usual, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We'll be getting through all of those throughout the show. But first, here's the latest news.
A very good morning. It's 2 minutes past 10. I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date with the latest news. Novak Djokovic has won his appeal against deportation from Australia. The court ruled the government's decision to revoke the tennis player's visa was unreasonable. Judge Anthony Kelly said Djokovic had received the required medical exemption before leaving for Australia, asking the court what more could this man have done. Djokovic's interview with Border Force confirmed he's caught COVID-19 twice and hasn't had the vaccine. Australia's immigration minister says he reserves the right to exercise personal power to still expel the star. 19 people, including 9 children, have been killed in an apartment fire in New York City. 60 others were injured, with many in a critical condition. 200 firefighters responded to the blaze. Authorities say it was a malfunctioning electric heater that caused the incident. The city's mayor, Eric Adams, called it one of the worst fires witnessed during modern times.
Over 30 people are in the hospital, 19 deaths. 9 of them are children, are babies that we lost. And we're all feeling this. And we're going to be here for this community to help them navigate through this.
In the UK, building developers have until March to agree a funding plan to replace dangerous cladding on low-rise flats, or they'll face new laws that force them to act. The Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, says developers need to start contributing to the cost this year, which is estimated to be around £4 billion. Liam Spender is a spokesman for the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign. He told GB News it's an issue affecting thousands of people.
Since Grenfell more than 4.5 years ago, about 90,000 buildings across the UK have found themselves in this unholy mess of being in buildings that have flammable cladding or have fire safety defects inside the building, things like fire doors that don't work properly, fire alarms that don't work properly, things like that. They've been trapped and unable to sell, and some of them are facing ruinous bills.
Pregnant women are being urged to get vaccinated against COVID-19 to protect their babies. The Department of Health and Social Care said that last year, between May and October, over 96% of all pregnant women who admitted to hospital with COVID symptoms were unvaccinated. The government says the jabs are safe during pregnancy and they have no impact on fertility. Around 100,000 critical workers will receive bundles of lateral flow tests today. It's part of the government's bid to try to protect key services. Food processing staff, Border Force officers and air traffic controllers will be among those to receive the swabs. Ministers hope the tests will ensure people aren't self-isolating unnecessarily and will help prevent outbreaks in workplaces. Kazakhstan's security forces have detained nearly 8,000 people after unrest in the country last week. Local government buildings were also briefly captured or torched in several major cities as the initially peaceful protests against fuel price hikes turned violent. Now, talks between the US and Russia are underway in Geneva this morning over the crisis in Ukraine. Western allies want to deter Russia from invading its neighbour, but Moscow's looking for concessions from NATO. Nearly 100,000 Russian troops have gathered close to the border with Ukraine. The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, says both sides will put forward proposals to see if they find a solution. Now, Buckingham Palace has unveiled the lineup of celebrations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. It's going to mark her 70 years on the throne. There's going to be a 4-day UK bank holiday weekend from the 2nd to the 5th of June. It's going to include a platinum pudding competition that's going to be judged by a panel, including Dame Mary Berry. Street parties, a concert and a chance to see the Queen's homes up close are also going to be included. Now, the discovery of the UK's largest and most complete fossil of a so-called sea dragon has been described as one of the greatest finds in Britain. The bones of the ichthyor were found at Rutland Water last February and dug up in August and September. The reptile lived around 180 million years ago. It's estimated to be 10 metres long, with its skull alone weighing nearly a tonne. It's 6 minutes past 10. You are right up to date here on GB News. I'll have the latest headlines for you in half an hour. Right now, though, let's go back to the point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Flaren-Emen and Patrick Christys on your TV and your radio. We've got a show full of all of the big stories and big discussions that you care about, so here's what's on the menu.
Yes, well, from today, 100,000 critical workers will be given daily lateral flow tests to help keep essential services open. We'll let you know who is eligible and what impact this is going to have on those key workers.
Yes, and the cost of living continues to soar, with new estimates suggesting average bills could increase by £600, topping £2,000 per year. We'll be talking to our North East of England reporter Rachel Sweeney about what this means for you at home.
Yes, and a new announcement is expected from Michael Gove on cladding, not before time, I think. Following the Grenfell tragedy, of course, in 2017, survivors, campaigners and just members of the public have been fighting for a change in the law and for developers to be the ones held accountable. We'll be speaking with co-founder of End Our Cladding Scandal Now later in the show.
Yes, we have all of that coming up and much more across the programme, and you can get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, Patrick gives his views on the Home Secretary's track record.
If Priti Patel was in any other job, would she still have that job? I want to look at her performance as Home Secretary so far in the round. Now, a story broke earlier today about the shocking extent to which Albanian criminals, many of them gangsters, are making an absolute mockery of our deportation system. Last year, Home Secretary Priti Patel signed a new deal with the Albanian government, pledging to take back criminals with no right to be in the UK. Astonishingly, 1 in 7 foreign-born offenders in the UK prisons are actually Albanian, and they really are taking the mick now. Convicted burglar Alex Vishaj was deported, but is now back in Britain again, naturally. He's thought to have used a fake passport to slip back by plane or ferry in September after entering an EU country using a visa waiver, which people in Albania, a non-EU country, can obtain to visit the European Union. And he's by no means the only one. Dorian Puka is back in Blighty yet again, despite 2 convictions in London for burglary and after twice being repatriated by the Home Office. 5 years ago, he was jailed for 9 months for attempting to break into a London home in Twickenham. His DNA was also linked to another burglary as well. He was deported, but was back 12 months later, living just a few miles from the scene of his burglaries. Classic. He was stopped by a police officer, get this, who saw him wearing an expensive watch that he'd stolen earlier that day. He was deported again and, you guessed it, he's back in Britain. How do we know this? Well, because apparently he's been pictured standing next to a white Porsche in Richmond in southwest London. But it's not just Priti Patel's inability to get to grips with the Albanian problem, which, again, accounts for 1 in 7 foreign criminals in the UK. 28,000 people and the rest have already come across the channel this year. Or last year, sorry, the end of last year, I should say. As far as I can tell, there hasn't been a single deportation. In fact, it emerged that she had a head of Border Force who didn't particularly seem to like borders, and the Border Force officers were reportedly refusing to tow migrant boats back. And, of course, the number of deportations is down in general. In the year of March 2020 to March 21, there were just 2,420 enforced returns, which is down from a peak of more than 21,000 in 2004, although one can maybe assume that COVID did have something to do with that, but that is still a monumental drop, isn't it? London knife crime is now at record levels. 30 teenagers were killed in the capital last year, and the Police Federation of England and Wales passed a motion of no confidence in Priti Patel. And on top of that, under her watch, our terror threat is, of course, severe. In fact, the government is so worried about the chance for terror attacks that they're introducing a law, Martin's Law, that will force some venues to provide protection against terror attacks. I thought that was the police's job, wasn't it? Anyway, she was unable, seemingly, to identify and close a loophole that meant that people could game our asylum system by essentially converting to Christianity so they could say they'd face religious persecution back home. And even years after being refused asylum, people are still out wandering the streets, presumably in many cases becoming more and more disillusioned and angry, and therefore more likely to do us harm. Patel was unable to get to grips with Insulate Britain for an astonishingly long time, wasn't she? And don't get me started on Extinction Rebellion. It is a catalogue of shortcomings and failures, isn't it? So I'll ask again, ladies and gentlemen, if Priti Patel was in another job, do you think she'd still have that job? Yeah, I know not everything's her fault, but, you know, the book just stopped with her, and I think if you were, you know, a lot of people watching this would imagine getting an appraisal every now and again at work, don't they? Maybe once every 6 months, once a year, whatever. What would hers look like, really? Do you think she'd be on for the old pay rise? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I do think that you make some strong points, and I think I was even quite surprised about some of the statistics and the number of Albanian criminals in this country. There is a stereotype about it, and you know, and it does seem to be somewhat rooted in some of the reality. But I think, you know, I don't know with Priti Patel. The other thing that I worry is that who would really replace her? You know, the hard talk that she gives, even though it's not always met up with the reality, it doesn't seem to be anyone immediately obvious that will be able to actually rise to that job. I mean, I do think about Sajid Javid. When he was the Home Secretary, he successfully blocked Shamima Begum's bringing back to the UK. So he was quite firm on that. So I don't know. Maybe there is a possibility that someone else could take over, but it's not obvious to me who that would be.
No, I think, look, you know, there are huge amounts of elements of being Home Secretary. Of course there are, and no one's saying it's an easy job. I'm certainly not saying it's an easy job, but one of the big elements of it is what's happening in the Channel. Well, she's not got to grips with that. One of the big elements of that is law and order on the streets, and she's not really got to grips with that. Then you've got to look at your asylum system in general. There are loopholes there. Look what happened outside that hospital in Liverpool, for example. And then, of course, you've got loads of other elements of it as well. The prison system, well, that's not really doing particularly well. The Police Federation have passed a motion of no confidence in her. And you start to build a picture, don't you? And you start to think, well, hang on a minute, what's going right?
I think many people would agree with you. I mean, this is something that has been going on for several years now. We've heard lots of very tough language. I mean, the Nationality and Borders Bill was meant to be quite transformative in terms of dealing with this issue, but it doesn't seem to be any evidence that that's actually had any material difference either. And so, yeah, I think...
Look, keep these views coming in, everyone. GBViews, GBnews.uk. Loads already, actually. Rob's been in touch. Thank you, Rob. Priti Patel acts tough to deceive us, but does nothing, and he's called her useless. And I do wonder about that with Patel as well. Is it actually worse that she talks tough and then nothing happens? Would it be better if she just said, you know what, there's no way I'm going to be able to stop what's happening in the Channel? I know she'd absolutely cop it, she couldn't quite say that, but if she's there going, we will make sure that there will be no single boats that come over here, meanwhile, just behind her as she's saying it, like, you know, there's boats coming in and all sorts.
And one of the things that's really striking to me, if you look at some of the statistics, the Home Office is really one of the, even though it's one of the most, you know, slowest and bureaucratic institutions, it's making so much money. The amount that it charges people for visa applications and renewals is often thousands and thousands of pounds that legitimate people doing the right way and the right routes have to pay, but people that are actually going illegally often get a lot of free stuff. It's so imbalanced, it's shocking.
No, it really is, it really is. And, you know I harp on about this every now and again, but why not? It is an issue very close to my heart. Yeah, when you look at what's happening at the moment, where we've got the capacity in the room and the finances, the public finances, to pay for certain people who we've got no idea who they are or where they've come from, to go and live in hotels for a period of time, and yet you see veterans, some cases, lining the streets, people who fought for this country. I just don't see how those two things can marry up.
And, you know, it's such an easy thing, I think, in terms of to win votes, if they're really just interested in securing votes. I mean, we had almost a whole referendum over immigration. I don't think the public can be any clearer that this is an issue that is at the top of their priority. The 2019 80-seat majority of the Conservatives was partly to take back control, and that included our borders. And so it's surprising that with all of the messages that have been sent in the polls and elections, the Conservatives haven't seemed to really grasp how to do it and how much it means to the public.
Yeah, Will's been in touch here. Thank you very much, Will. You're missing the point, in a sense, he says. No, because they don't actually care. So I think Will's point there is that realistically the major point is the fact that he doesn't think that British care. I'm not sure he says she doesn't care. I just think it's a question of competence, isn't it? Someone here has said, I won't name you, don't worry, Philip. He said, get Nigel Garage in the Home Office. I'm assuming you meant someone else there, but Nigel's garage might actually do a better job.
Well, I mean, there has been a lot of talk, and I think I perhaps agree with it, that actually one of the ways in which the Conservatives do the best is when they have a challenger from the right. And right now that's been the Conservative backbenchers that have been holding Boris Johnson's feet to the fire when it comes to lockdown restrictions and so on. But I actually think the Tories need to be held accountable from the right when Keir Starmer and Labour Party are not really going to push through tougher restrictions when it comes to immigration.
Absolutely. Well, look, these views really are flooding in now, ladies and gents. I've got them right in front of me, as you can tell, and they are, absolutely flying in. So make sure that you keep them coming, please. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Let's kickstart this week strongly. Right, well, moving away now. From today, 100,000 critical workers will be given daily lateral flow tests to help keep essential services open. So our East of England reporter, Amelia Harper, is at Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service with more on this right now.
We're here at Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service because Fire Control Service personnel are among the 100,000 critical workers that have been identified as part of this daily lateral flow testing scheme. It's all part of government plans to try to alleviate staffing shortages amid this Omicron COVID wave. Last week, the UK topped over 200,000 cases for the first time in the pandemic. So who is eligible? Well, mainly people include those working in national infrastructure and security, some jobs in the electricity sector, assisting people working in warehouses and in surge labs, and of course people working in control rooms like the one in the headquarters that we have here in Bedfordshire. So now let's speak to Matt Blanchard. Matt, you are the station manager here in Kempston. Tell us what you think about this daily COVID testing and what effect is this virus having on the force?
Good morning. So for us, testing is a really important and useful infection prevention and control measure. And what it does is it will prevent outbreaks on station and it will keep our staff safe. So importantly, our appliances are crewed and they can go out and respond to emergency incidents within the community. Testing is also really useful for the public, so they have confidence in us, so they know that we're following the latest government guidance. So when we interact with those communities, doing our prevention and protection activities, they feel safe.
Brilliant. And how has the new Omicron wave impacted your force? Has it had any impact on your force? Have any of your staff members had to isolate or have got sick?
Like a lot of workplaces, we've been affected by the Omicron wave, but we've got robust business continuity plans for when there are staff absences, and we've got station risk assessments that are reviewed regularly, so that enables us to limit the spread within the workplace.
And finally, you work in a lot of bubbles. You've got numerous fire engines behind you. If one crew from perhaps one fire engine gets coronavirus and they take this daily test, what happens then to the rest of them? What procedures do you then have to follow?
Yes, so there's circumstances where we can't maintain social distancing in the workplace. For example, when responding to incidents within the crew cab, but crews will ensure they wear face masks. They'll ensure there's some ventilation in the crew cab, so that if there is an exposure, it will be limited to just that appliance and those persons that are affected.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for your time. It's great to hear from emergency service personnel and what they think about this testing scheme, so thank you. This precautionary testing scheme will be in place for 5 weeks. It doesn't cover all critical workers that perhaps the government set out at the start of the pandemic, and it comes amid difficulty at times during the last few weeks trying to get rapid lateral flow tests delivered to people's homes.
That was Amelia Harper, our East of England reporter. Well, the UK Health and Security Agency has been censured by statistics watchdog, the Office for National Statistics Regulation, for publishing inflated and inaccurate data about COVID.
You'd have thought it, eh? They say the health bodies claim that 200,000 people were catching Omicron every single day, as published by Health Secretary Sajid Javid last year, was not supported by evidence. So the OSR's leader, Ed Humphreys, fantastic surname, said the claim caused confusion and some speculation in the media, which distracts from the message the statistics are conveying.
Yes, we'll be talking more about this in the next hour.
Yes, indeed. It's shocking stuff, that, though, isn't it, really? I mean, I think it's something that we all potentially suspected had been going on and indeed have possibly been going on for quite a while. But how does that make you feel? Because those statistics are used to affect your lives, to bring in rules and regs at the end of the day. And if they're wrong or if they're deliberately misleading, then That's the problem.
Yeah, no, we often hear about conspiracy theorists and so on making sure that there's distrust with the vaccine programme and so on. But actually, I think things like this that are overtly misleading do a lot more damage.
I find it quite amazing how often conspiracy theories have been right during this pandemic. But there we go. Anyway, after the break. Right, OK, look, so why are female prisoners still being asked to be incarcerated with male prisoners? We'll have one of the major campaigners fighting to keep women's prisons single-sex joining us very, very soon.
Indeed.
Hello again. It's a rather grey Monday for most, with a lot of cloud out there, but it's turning milder, certainly in the west, whereas across much of the east, still quite a chilly feel, but much of the east will stay dry. Further west, it's going to be dank and drizzly thanks to this warm front, but it is, as I say, bringing milder air. So temperatures on the rise across the west, double digits likely here, but a lot of cloud and outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle covering parts of the Midlands, northwest England, particularly western Scotland. Much of eastern England will stay dry, but a bit of drizzle is possible here and there. And further west, it won't rain all day. Parts of Wales, southwest England having some drier spells, but quite soggy in western Scotland, Northern Ireland. But look at the temperatures here. Double digits, maybe up to 11 or 12, whereas in the east, just 6 or 7 Celsius. Now, in the east, we'll see temperatures dropping early on, but actually then later in the night as the rain and drizzle pushes in, so the milder air moves in as well. Whereas for Scotland and Northern Ireland, clearer skies here will allow the temperatures to drop. For England and Wales, it will be quite wet, some heavy bursts of rain possible as this thicker cloud continues to drift in, but that will, as I say, keep the temperatures up. A chilly start then for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but a much brighter day here tomorrow. A few showers in the northwest. Quite a grey affair for the Midlands, South Wales, southern and eastern England, with outbreaks of rain, particularly across the southeastern corner, but that will slowly pull away into the afternoon and evening. Brighter skies for northern England, North Wales come the afternoon, some sunshine likely here, but as a result it won't be as mild. It'll turn quite cold quite quickly with these clear skies on Tuesday night across more central parts. We'll still keep a brisk breeze blowing across the north throughout the next 48 hours, actually pretty gusty here. But light winds further south will allow a touch of frost. And increasingly through the rest of this week, we are going to see some dense patches of fog around, but not much in the way of rain through the rest of this week.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. It's 10:25 a.m. This is To The Point with Patrick Christys and Inaya Falarin Iman right here on GB News. And we're live on your TV, as you can see. We're also live on your radio this morning as well.
Yes, an amendment will be discussed today in the House of Lords, which asks for male prisoners to not be housed in women's prisons. One of the passionate speakers on this subject is Dr. Kate Coleman, Director of Keep Britain Prisons Single Sex.
Absolutely, and thank you very, very much for taking the time to join us at what must be said was relatively short notice, Kate, so thank you, we do appreciate it. Look, how are you first and foremost, and please can you just kind of whiz our viewers through what's really going on here, what's happening?
Right, so the situation with women's prisons in England and Wales through the MOJ policies is that some male prisoners, if they identify as transgender, so if they identify as female, provided that they meet certain criteria, they will be held in the female prison estate. This can include males who've been convicted of violent offences against women and girls, sexual offences against women and girls, and those who have intact male genitalia. We believe that this is really just quite an egregious use of the female prison estate and is using women either as human shields for their safety or to validate identity. And that's what the amendment today seeks to change. That if the law constrains the Ministry of Justice in making decisions to keep women in prison safe, then it's the law that has to change.
Coleman, I mean, would you say that prisons should be single-sex in all circumstances? I guess critics might say that transgender women who have had surgery or who have got the gender recognition certificate are also vulnerable and they should be in the prisons that correspond to the gender that they identify, and that would be putting them in female prisons.
Right, well, yes, we do believe that prisons should be strictly single sex. And I think we have to look at what is this about? Is this about safety or is this about validation of identity? Because the amendment that's being discussed this evening specifies that a third space should be made available for those minority of transgender male prisoners who identify as women and who cannot reasonably be kept safe in the male estate. We know from the Ministry of Justice data that the overwhelming majority of them are kept safe in the male estate. It's only a very small number who the risk assessment processes, the MOJ believe, should be held with women. But we don't think that that's really the right situation at all, because if it's about safety, if it's about the safety of this vulnerable group of male prisoners, then they shouldn't be housed with women. They can be kept safe separately. You know, this is about sex. This is about the importance of sex for safeguarding, for risk assessment. It's not an issue of minority gender rights. You know, the gender recognition certificate, it provides that somebody can have their acquired gender legally recognised. It's not changing sex. It's not an intention to replace sex with gender, and it's not an intention to undermine the possibility of sex-based rights for women. And I think it would be an absolutely extraordinary situation if we have to interpret the Equality Act, which provides for the possibility of single-sex spaces for females, for women and for girls. If we have to explain that, we have to interpret that to render single-sex spaces for females absolutely impossible. If there's always some group of male prisoners for female prisons or other males who identify as transgender who have to be admitted to single-sex spaces for women, I just find that extraordinary.
I think many people will echo your sentiments very strongly, but have you got any specific examples or evidence of when this has actually caused uncomfortability or unsafety for women or females within female prisons, the law as it stands right now?
Yes, well, we're in contact with former female offenders and they do report a huge amount of unease, disquiet. They're forced to refer to these males who they correctly identify as male as female, use female pronouns. If they misgender, they can receive a punishment, whether that's loss of privileges or segregation. They report sexualized behavior from these prisoners, intimidating behavior, threatening behavior. You mentioned prisoners with a gender recognition certificate. But I think we need to make clear here that there's absolutely no requirement to undergo any surgical alteration to your body or any hormonal treatment in order to obtain that gender recognition certificate.
Yeah, and that's the point, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We know of violence against offenders who've gone on to obtain a gender recognition certificate in prison, have then been transferred to the female estate.
Exactly.
Completely impact male genitalia, which they've then been exposing to women. And I feel for prison officers, because the reports that we've had is that they feel absolutely constrained by policy. They can't complain. They can't put into effect the normal processes which they would were an incident to occur with another prisoner.
But my understanding as well of this situation would be that currently, if you had a male sex offender and they went to prison, so they went through court, presumably those court proceedings would be recorded in the local, or if it was bad enough, national press, and then they go into a prison, they then potentially decide that they want to change gender, whether there's any kind of surgical element to that, or medical, chemical elements to that or not. They can then maybe take a different name, and one would imagine they would take a different name, right? And then get moved into a female prison. And actually, if they potentially came out of there, isn't that potentially a way around them being held to account for the rest of their lives for those things, really? Because they've basically given themselves a different identity after being convicted of a very heinous crime. And they could move in next door to you, you could Google their name and nothing would come up.
Well, I mean, you've got two issues here. When you get a gender recognition certificate, if you're this male sex offender that you've just been describing, you will then, for the rest of your life, be risk assessed as if you are a woman, and only using the risk assessment tools that are in place for females. So that means there's one very important risk assessment tool which was developed specifically for adult male sex offenders, and it now cannot be used on this person because they have to be risk assessed as if they are a female. And that's for the rest of their life. That's for parole, that's for probation, that's going forwards in the prison system should they commit a further offence and be imprisoned. And I think that is an absolutely massive safeguarding loophole which has been created with absolutely no evidence that if you receive a gender recognition certificate, suddenly the level of risk you pose plummets to that posed by females.
And finally, Dr. Coleman, just very quickly, we don't have a lot of time. I mean, you've been doing some very courageous and passionate work on this, but has there been any support for you, whether that's in Parliament or in government, for the changes that you're hoping to get forward?
Well, we do have support in Parliament. We have support across both parties and across all parties and across both houses. And I think you'll see a selection of the peers who are supportive of our position, our campaign, speaking up tonight. And I'm very much looking forward to that debate. Within Parliament, within government, we do also have support. We know that these issues, even if the amendment today falls, we know that these issues are being paid close attention to by government.
All right. Look, Kate, thank you very much. And again, thank you for coming on at very, very short notice. And look, we'll have to have you back on soon. Good luck with everything going forward. You certainly got my full support here, that's for sure. Dr. Kate Coleman, Director of Keep Prisons Single Sex. What do you make of that, ladies and gentlemen? Quite a lot of you just started emailing in already about that, actually. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Do you really think, actually, that it matters whether or not prisons are single sex? Some people suggesting, why don't we have trans prisons, for example? I'm not sure it's quite as easy as that, is it? But anyway, after the break, we'll be joined by GB News' Home and Security Editor, the one and only Mark White, to get the latest on reports that tennis superstar Novak Djokovic has been re-arrested. Don't go anywhere. First, it's your headlines.
It's 10:35. I'm Rosie Wright. Good morning. Let's get you up to date. Novak Djokovic has won his appeal against deportation from Australia. The court ruled the government's decision to revoke the tennis player's visa was unreasonable. Judge Anthony Kelly said Djokovic had received the required medical exemption before leaving for Australia. Australia's immigration minister said he reserves the right to exercise personal power to expel the star. 19 people, including 9 children, have been killed in an apartment fire in New York City. 60 others were injured, with 13 currently in a critical condition. 200 firefighters responded to the blaze. Authorities say it was a malfunctioning electric heater that caused the incident. In the UK, Building developers have until March to agree a funding plan to replace dangerous cladding on low-rise flats or be forced to pay with a new tax. The Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, says developers need to start contributing to the estimated £4 billion cost this year. Pregnant women are being urged to get vaccinated against COVID-19 to protect their babies. The Department of Health and Social Care said that last year, between May and October, over 96% of all the pregnant women who were admitted to hospital with COVID symptoms were unvaccinated. The government says the jabs are safe during pregnancy and have no impact on fertility. Now, Buckingham Palace has unveiled the lineup of celebrations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. It's going to mark her 70 years on the throne, with a 4-day UK bank holiday weekend from the 2nd to the 5th of June. It's going to include a platinum pudding competition that will be judged by a panel including Dame Mary Berry, street parties, a concert, a chance to see the Queen's homes close up will also be included. It is 10:37. You are up to date. I'll have more on all of today's main stories for you at 11 o'clock.
Yes, OK. Well, hello, everybody. It's just gone 10:36, and this is To The Point, of course. Me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Falarin Iman, right here on GB News, live on your telly, live on your radio. Now, Mark White joins us, our home and security editor. Sorry, Mark. And the big news this morning is the world number one Novak Djokovic has won his appeal against deportation for Australia. But look, Mark, I'm just going to throw it straight over to you now, because there's been some updates on that.
Yes, indeed. We are still waiting to hear, because the court has ruled that it is within the discretion of the immigration minister, the state government, effectively to overrule the court's decision. That would be the nuclear option, and to kick Novak Djokovic out of the country anyway, to revoke his visa again after it being reintroduced. We're waiting to hear from that. The very latest is that the minister, or at least the spokesman for the immigration minister, says he's still deliberating. No decision has been made. Now, our presenter, Nigel Farage, has been out in Serbia, in Belgrade, speaking to Novak Djokovic's family. Clearly, they're very distressed by everything that's been happening, as is Novak Djokovic. They are due to give a news conference, I think, about midday today, but have spoken to us in advance of that. Let's listen to what the family told Nigel Farage.
Goran Djokovic, your nephew has been held in detention for the last few days. How do the family feel about that?
Of course, we feel very, very, very bad about that. You know, we still don't believe that it's happening in the 21st century. Number one in the world and one of the best player ever, one of the best sportsmen ever. You know, he's arrested by the government in Australia.
But this morning, or overnight, after about 7 hours of a very difficult hearing with technical problems, and it seemed to go on forever, but the judge said that Novak had obeyed the rules, he'd met the criteria for entry into Melbourne, and released him. So there must have been a brief moment of joy.
Yeah, we're supposed to celebrate that, you know, to win over Australian state, you know, but unfortunately this is not true, because Novak is still in the lawyer's office in the building of the court, trying to see what they will do, because the threatening from the lawyer, the state lawyer, he's threatening that Minister for Immigration can overrule decision of the court and can arrest him again. This is the threatening for him. And also, they told him personally, for him it's better to go immediately, to leave Australia immediately, or they can match the penalty, 3 years ban to get into Australia in next 3 years.
So they're really trying to force him to leave the country?
Yes, and the federal police was there. Recently I heard that they left the court, the basement, but I don't know what's happening at the moment, because we are still waiting, and he's still consulting with the lawyers what to do.
How does this make you feel about the Australian state?
I cannot believe it's happening. You know, this is like a horror. You know, I still cannot believe it, because we are living, protesting every day with the people. You know, and I don't know what's wrong with the people there. You know, if Novak is not welcoming, they're supposed to say that. Please don't come. And if they issue the visa for him, and after that they arrest him, this is like. For me, it looks like a trap for the animals, you know, like a wolf animals in the mountain, and they invite him to come and they trap him and put him in the jail, trying to put him on his knees. But it's not possible. With Serbia, we are a very proud Balkan nation, Serbian. We will see what will happen, and I expect they will keep pressure on Novak, because they don't want to release. Even, as I said, the lawyer is threatening in front of the judge. He's threatening to Novak, and the judge was really doing his job, which is right, he do the right job, and this is not about the sympathy or no sympathy, but Novak didn't break any law.
Well, Scott Morrison said rules are rules, and the judge upheld the rules this morning. We'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah, Scott has to take care about his position in the next election. I don't know, maybe his PR is thinking that this is good. I don't think it's good, and I have feeling that he will not be anymore after April. He will not be anymore in Prime Minister in Australia. This is what I think, and I hope.
Yes, well, of course, Nigel Farage with the family of Novak Djokovic. It's a really complex case, this, really. And Mark, look, you've been all over this, really, for a while for us now. And there's a sinister element to this, isn't there? There's a rule of law, there are rules, but actually the Australian government seems to be saying that they can swerve them anyway if they want to get him out. Is that right? Yeah,
there's also a bit of a conflict between the way in which the individual states are operating and the state government. Is operating here. The state government certainly seems to be responding significantly to public discourse and the way in which the public has reacted to this whole issue. And it would be fair to say that there is overwhelming negativity towards Novak Djokovic, and that is really understandable, I think, because it is a backlash, I think, for what the Australian people have had to put up with for 2 years or more now, where they have effectively been a nation in lockdown. I think we've probably all know people that have been trying to get to Australia in recent months. I know I've got good friends that were trying to visit their family over there and have never been allowed to get in because of the rules. So there is anger out there, a bit of a backlash, and obviously Novak Djokovic is feeling that, and he feels very unfairly treated because he was given this exemption by the Victorian government. As far as the Tennis Association, of course, for the Australian Open is concerned, they had made this exemption for him and allowed him to come in. Now, it's such a complicated issue on individual states versus what the national Australian government rules and regulations are on immigration. You can be invited in if you apply for a visa through the Home Affairs Department in Australia and granted a visa, but then you still have to satisfy individual health restrictions. Now, in deciding on this case, the judge didn't go into the entirety. They just couldn't, it had to be done. It had to be done quickly. It was considered on very narrow parameters. Did the border force officer on immigration on Novak Djokovic's arrival give him enough time to rebut some of the points they were putting to him on the issues of the fact that he hadn't been vaccinated, he had tested positive, and he says he was exempt. Can he provide the proof of that, etc.? And as part of that, we actually were treated to some transcript, which is really quite fascinating. Some of the transcript between Novak Djokovic and this border official, where at 4 a.m. in the morning, Novak Djokovic is being asked to provide all this proof, which he says he can, and he's been given a very finite time. 20 minutes or so. I'll read you actually a little bit of that transcript. So this is Djokovic saying to the border force officer, so you're giving me legally 20 minutes to try to provide additional information that I don't have. He says, at 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, you kind of put me in a very awkward position where at 4 in the morning, I can't call the director of Tennis Australia. I can't engage with anybody from the Victorian state government through the Tennis Australia. You just put me in a very uncomfortable position. I don't know what else I can tell you. So that is effectively what the judge was deciding this case on. Look, you did not give this man the proper opportunity to provide this proof and to rebut. the questions that you were asking, the points that you were putting to him.
Just on the, you mentioned a point there, Mark, about the feeling amongst the Australian people, right? Now, they have obviously been absolutely clobbered completely for the best part of a year and a bit now, haven't they? And you can understand, of course, some negative public sentiment towards a man who has not had to live under the same rules as them, being able to wander in and potentially win however many millions of dollars it is if he goes and wins the Australian Open again. You can see that. But what is the mood? Is the mood music really that bad? Do you think the vast majority of the Australian public want Novak out?
I think many do, and probably the majority. Speaking to friends over in Australia, they would say that there's a very significant movement against Djokovic there, but it's not necessarily hatred of the man. No. Although, you know, he is quite a focused sportsman that might be difficult for a lot of people to empathise with too much. But it is, I think, really a manifestation of what people have been going through for a very long period of time, where they have had to undergo some very strict, significant restrictions in that country that has placed Australia, to those who are not Australian citizens or residents, effectively on lockdown. You know, you will not get into that country, as I say, many people have. And I think people who've not been able to see loved ones, who've not been able to come to visit them, who've had many restrictions at home and are still living by that. They think that, you know, it's one rule for him, one rule for them, and that is fueling the anger. But I think a lot of that anger is also manifesting itself and being directed towards the Australian government and the way in which the whole of the COVID issue has been handled. Because, of course, now things have relaxed in Australia. People are, under certain restrictions, allowed to travel to that country again. Omicron is in the country, and it's absolutely running rampant, you know, it's rampaging, I should say, through the country. I think 500,000 people have now tested positive for coronavirus in the country. So
it's there properly. Yeah.
Of course, big time.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you very much, Mark White there, our home and security editor, to talk you to the latest about Novak Djokovic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're going to be going to our views throughout the show, but I mean, some of the views are very mixed. Interestingly, on this Djokovic situation, some people are saying there are people dying, starving, living in terrible conditions. We spent all the time on a privileged tennis player. Another person saying, why do elite sports people think that they are above the law? So.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, really, isn't it? But I suppose it does come down to a lot of the things are about how draconian, I suppose, the Australians are. Anyway, right, tributes are pouring in now for Labour MP and Shadow Minister Jack Dromey, who sadly passed away in his Birmingham constituency on Friday. Joining us now from outside his Erdington office is our West Midlands reporter, Balvinder Sidhu. Thank you very much, Bal. How are people reacting to this news?
Well, this morning people have been leaving flowers outside his office in his Erdington constituency in Birmingham. I mean, he was elected MP here in 2010. He leaves behind his wife of 40 years, Harriet Harman, and 2 boys and a daughter. People here have been telling me he was one of the most down-to-earth people they'd ever met. He would speak to everyone, regardless of their status, in the same manner, whether they were the CEO of a company or a cleaner. And of course, MPs from across the political spectrum have been paying tribute to him, including, former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, who described him as a great humanitarian. Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, has also said that he was someone who really cared about serving his people, his constituents. West Midlands Mayor Andy Street described him as a true Democrat. He leaves behind a legacy of someone who was hugely respected and admired as someone who really represented working people. I mean, his background was as a trade unionist. He was part of the Transport and General Workers Union for a number of years before he became an MP. He always fought for people who were labourers, who essentially worked hard. This is a huge loss, not just to this constituency, this region, but nationally across, the politics. So basically, I mean, 24 hours before he passed away, he was in the House of Commons debating, raising the issue of Afghan refugees. So the tributes have continued to pour in over the weekend into today. He will be always remembered as a highly regarded and respected MP.
Anyway, Bal, thank you very, very much, Bal. Great to have you on, and we're going to see a very sad case, of course, but someone who'll be deeply missed within his local community, no doubt. So thank you very much, Alvin City there. Reporting to us from the scene. Now, moving on.
With the energy price cap set to rise on April 1st, millions of people around the country will see their bills rocket. The average annual bill is predicted to increase by £600 and top £2,000 a year. Age UK North Tyneside says older people are going to be disproportionately affected. Our North East of England reporter Rachel Sweeney can tell us more. Thank you for joining us this morning, Rachel. Why could older people be hit the hardest?
Well, Age UK says it's down to the cost of living. That's why older people will be disproportionately affected by the energy tariff price cap rise. They say that the cost of gas at wholesale is soaring. That's something that we have covered extensively on GBNews. We know that that's putting pressure on suppliers and that that's filtering down to cause issues for the consumer. But we need to think about older people because they're on a fixed budget. They're usually on pensions. They very rarely have a second income coming in. So if they're using that money for fuel, that money has to come from somewhere else. Age UK North Tyneside says it's worried that there'll be a heat or eat situation and that people will be rationing heat and the houses will be cold and that will put more pressure on the NHS, it will cause more illness. Well, Age UK says that people can get in touch for support on this. They say that there are plenty of ways that you can minimise what you're using. They have also said that heating via electricity can cost 3 times more than gas. That's something that they definitely want people to address. Well, I've been speaking to Yvonne Probert, Head of Charity Services at Age UK in North Tyneside.
So from Age UK's perspective, older people aren't alone out there. We are here to help them, and we can help them with either energy advice, so that can be around how to draft-proof their home, how to cut their energy bills by doing simple things like closing their curtains at night time or keeping their radiators clear. But we can also help them with free, impartial and confidential advice around their actual energy costs. So that can be whether or not they've got benefits such as the cold winter payment or whether or not they're eligible for things like the warm homes discount. There's a lot of ways older people can actually cut their bills.
And Rachel, why is it that older people are less likely to change providers?
Well, according to Age UK, apparently the complicated forms put them off. Having to do anything online puts them off. They also said that there's a loyalty there, that they don't want to switch. If you look behind me, I live down there in County Durham. There's plenty of pit villages down there. We have a much older population here in the northeast of England because of our background and our heritage. So it's a particular concern for my patch. I spoke to some money-saving experts yesterday and they said actually the energy market is in crisis. There's currently no deals cheaper than the price cap. So the best advice right now is to wait and see. People are urged to contact Age UK for tips and tricks. We'll keep you posted.
Very much, and a fantastic, stunning setting behind you as well, of course. We'd expect nothing less, Rachel Sweeney. Oh, hey, there it is. The North East, right. Thank you very much. Well, keep all your thoughts coming in to us, of course, and as loads of you have been doing, and we're going to go to some of those views right now. Not a lot of love for Novak Djokovic.
Yes, it's been quite surprising, actually. I mean, I'm quite sympathetic to the critics, even though I'm completely disagree with the way in which Australia and New Zealand, for that matter, have handled COVID. I think it's been draconian. Zero COVID is an absolute failure and disaster, and it's just terrible. But I do think that, why is he above the law? I think Australians have had to put up with, 2 years of suppression and restriction and constraints. And even if he may have followed some rules, I think why should he be able to waltz in, unvaccinated and win potentially £500,000?
Well, there you go. Had he not been granted permission to go, he would have been going wild on social media to raise anger. He may be number one, but he should follow the rules there. He thinks he's special and he's not, and that's according to Trish. Trish, thank you very much. There are a lot of people that, first thing, most of you are not happy with Novak, but Elizabeth is quite happy. Australia have shot themselves in the foot with this international scandal. Yeah, it's really tricky for me to say. Look, I personally think Novak Djokovic should just be allowed in, because my view is they shouldn't have these rules to begin with.
I agree with that, but then it should be for all of us as well.
If they do have the rules, it becomes very, very tricky to see how they kind of give him some kind of exemption. It's also raising really serious question marks, isn't it, over the rule of law versus the state power. And
regulation, yeah.
That's a concern.
Or on women's prisons, Keith Yates says, if born with male parts, you are male, and therefore if sentenced to a prison, you serve that in a male prison. If you wish to not comply, do not commit the crime in the first place.
Hey, with logic like that, it's hard to argue, isn't it? Well, look, thank you very much, everyone who's been emailing in. Keep them coming. We love to see it. GB Views at gbnews.uk. And I've got loads more coming up for you on the other side of this particular break. But yes, we'll be going to you, of course, throughout this show. Lots of really, really good comments there. Bear in mind we started as well, didn't we, with what's been going on. The Albanians, criminals making a mockery of our deportation system.
Any views about that?
Yes, Priti Patel's position, should she reconsider it? And loads more. We'll see you after the break.
Hello again. It's a rather grey Monday for most, with a lot of cloud out there, but it's turning milder, certainly in the west, whereas across much of the east, still quite a chilly feel. But much of the east will stay dry. Further west, it's going to be dank and drizzly thanks to this warm front, but it is, as I say, bringing milder air. So temperatures on the rise across the west, double digits likely here, but a lot of cloud and outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle covering parts of the Midlands, northwest England, particularly western Scotland. Much of eastern England will stay dry, but a bit of drizzle is possible here and there. And further west, it won't rain all day. Parts of Wales, southwest England having some drier spells, but quite soggy in western Scotland, Northern Ireland. But look at the temperatures here. Double digits, maybe up to 11 or 12, whereas in the east, just 6 or 7 Celsius. Now, in the east, we'll see temperatures dropping early on, but actually then later in the night as the rain and drizzle pushes in, so the milder air moves in as well. Whereas for Scotland and Northern Ireland, clearer skies here will allow the temperatures to drop. For England and Wales, it will be quite wet, some heavy bursts of rain possible as this thicker cloud continues to drift in, but that will, as I say, keep the temperatures up. A chilly start then for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but a much brighter day here tomorrow. A few showers in the northwest. Quite a grey affair for the Midlands, South Wales, southern and eastern England, with outbreaks of rain, particularly across the southeastern corner, but that will slowly pull away into the afternoon and evening. Brighter skies for northern England, North Wales come the afternoon, some sunshine likely here, but as a result it won't be as mild. It'll turn quite cold quite quickly with these clear skies on Tuesday night across more central parts. We'll still keep a brisk breeze blowing across the north throughout the next 48 hours, actually pretty gusty here. But light winds further south will allow a touch of frost. And increasingly through the rest of this week, we are going to see some dense patches of fog around, but not much in the way of rain through the rest of this week.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, Ananaya Falarin Iman, on your TV and very much on your radio now as well. We're here all the way through until midday with a show full of all of today's big stories and everything to get you going.
As usual, make sure that you get in touch with your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be reading that out all throughout the show. But first, here's the latest news.
A very good morning. It's just gone 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date with the latest headlines. As Novak Djokovic wins his appeal against deportation from Australia, his uncle has told GB News his nephew has been treated like an animal. Well, the court ruled the government's decision to revoke the tennis player's visa was unreasonable. Judge Anthony Kelly said Djokovic had received the required medical exemption before leaving for Australia, asking the court, what more could this man have done? Djokovic's interview with Border Force confirmed he's caught COVID twice and hasn't had the vaccine. Australia's immigration minister says he reserves the right to exercise personal power to expel the star.
I don't know what's wrong with the people there, you know. If Novak is not welcoming, they're supposed to say that. Please don't come. And if they issue the visa for him and after that they arrest him, this is like, for me, it looks like trap for the animals, you know, like a wolf. Animals in the mountain, you know, and they invite him to come and they trap him and put him in the jail, trying to put him on his knees.
In the UK, building developers have until March to agree a funding plan to replace dangerous cladding on low-rise flats or be forced to pay with a new tax. The Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, says developers need to start contributing to the cost this year, which is estimated to be around £4 billion. Well, Liam Spender is a spokesman for the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign group. He told GB News it's an issue affecting thousands of people.
Since Grenfell more than 4.5 years ago, about 90,000 buildings across the UK have found themselves in this unholy mess of being in buildings that have flammable cladding or have fire safety defects inside the building, things like fire doors that don't work properly, fire alarms that don't work properly, things like that. And they've been trapped and unable to sell, and some of them are facing ruinous bills.
8 men who took legal action against Manchester City Football Club after complaining of their abuse by a former youth coach have lost a High Court fight. The former players claimed the convicted paedophile, Barry Bennell, abused them when they were playing for teams he coached between 1979 and 85. Well, they said Manchester City was vicariously liable for the harm they suffered, but a judge ruled against them. Mr. Justice Johnson said the connection between the abuse and Bennell's relationship with the football club was insufficient and that the claims were brought too late to result in a fair trial. Pregnant women are being urged to get vaccinated against COVID-19 to protect their babies. The Department of Health and Social Care said that last year, between May and October, over 96% of all pregnant women who were admitted to hospital with COVID symptoms were unvaccinated. The government says the jabs are safe during pregnancy and have no impact on fertility. Around 100,000 critical workers are going to receive bundles of lateral flow tests today. It's all part of the government's bid to protect key services. Food processing staff, Border Force officers, air traffic controllers, they'll be among those to receive the swabs. Ministers are hoping the tests will ensure people aren't self-isolating unnecessarily and that the tests will prevent outbreaks in workplaces. 19 people, including 9 children, have been killed in an apartment fire in New York City. 60 others were injured. 13 people are in a critical condition. 200 firefighters responded to the blaze. Authorities say it was a malfunctioning electric heater that caused the incident. The city's mayor, Eric Adams, called it one of the worst fires witnessed during modern times.
Over 30 people are in the hospital, 19 deaths. 9 of them are children, are babies that we lost. And we're all feeling this. And we're going to be here for this community to help them navigate through this.
Talks between the US and Russia are underway in Geneva this morning. It's over the crisis in Ukraine. Western allies want to deter Russia from invading its neighbour, but Moscow's looking for concessions from NATO. Nearly 100,000 Russian troops have gathered close to the border with Ukraine. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says both sides will put forward proposals to see if they can find a solution. Now, Buckingham Palace has unveiled the lineup of celebrations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. It's going to mark her 70 years on the throne, with a 4-day UK bank holiday weekend from the 2nd to the 5th of June. It's going to include a platinum pudding competition that's going to be judged by a panel, including Dame Mary Berry. There's also going to be street parties, a concert, a chance also to see the Queen's homes up close. Also, the discovery of the UK's largest and most complete fossil of a so-called sea dragon has been described as one of the greatest finds in Britain. It's the bones of the ichthyosaur were found at the Rutland Water last February and dug up in August and September. The reptile lived around 180 million years ago. It's estimated to be 10 metres long, with its skull alone weighing nearly a tonne. It is 6 minutes past 11. I'll be back with the latest headlines for you in half an hour. Right now, let's return to the point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GBNews with me, Anaya Florin Iman, and Patrick Christys on your TV and your radio. We've got a show full of all of the big stories and big discussions that you care about, so here's what's on the menu.
Yes, right. Well, we'll bring you the very latest on Novak Djokovic's visa case in Australia as his family continue their passionate press conference. He's won in the courts, but will the government still kick him out anyway?
Yes, and online daters beware, romance scams on the rise in the lead up to Valentine's Day. An expert gives us tips on how to negotiate the online dating scene.
Well, there we go, yes. And finally, the BBC has found itself caught in an anti-Semitism row. But what did they do? Did they do anything? We'll have to have a look into that with you later on.
Yes, we have all that coming up and much more across the programme, so make sure to get in touch as usual with your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Well, from today, 100,000 critical workers will be given daily lateral flow tests to help keep essential services open.
Yes, indeed. Well, this is to reduce the number of people currently isolating in key sectors, but essential industries, including the health sector, remain worried about staff shortages increasing the NHS backlog and ultimately leading to unnecessary deaths.
Yes, Professor Kara Sokora is a leading British physician with over 50 years' experience in medicine and former chief of cancer programme of the World Health Organization. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, what do you make of some of these changes that have been announced?
So I think we're gradually moving to make the whole pandemic stop and go to make it endemic when it just lives with us, like the flu, like the common cold and so on. We can't afford, not just from money sense, but also from health sense, to do anything else. I mean, the real problem with the NHS at the moment is not people with COVID, it's people isolating, staff isolating, and therefore not coming to work. So the whole routine business of healthcare is grinding to a halt as more and more people stay off work. So we've got to change that. There's no need for it anymore. We've got to sort of almost embrace the virus now and say it's going to live with us and we're just going to have to get over it.
Professor Sokora, I mean, when you say that we're moving away from it being a pandemic to something more endemic, is that a kind of policy decision? What does that take? Is it a policy decision, a kind of change in mindset, or does something shift with the virus that makes us change our policies? I mean, what does that process really look like of us learning to live with COVID?
I think it's not really a policy decision. No one knows what to do. And you can look around the world and different countries have come to different conclusions about lockdowns, about testing, about border control and so on. And we're sort of in a more liberal phase here in the UK compared to many European countries. But I think it's the right decision. And it's the only way out of this. If we do the Australian approach with the shut borders, and we've seen the tennis star footage and so on, and really try and eradicate the virus, it just won't work. We've got to develop techniques to live with it, as we have with lots of other viruses. One of the problems at the moment is it's winter. And in winter, the NHS is bad. You know, I've been a doctor for nearly 50 years, not quite 50 years. And every winter, exactly at this time, mid-January, everything grinds to a halt. Operations are cancelled, scans can't be done because there's a whole lot of people that come in with a variety of chest infections. And on top of that, we've got COVID now. So it's ground to a halt. And not having the staff is really damaging to the whole thing. We will get out of this. We'll get out of it before spring, I'm pretty sure. And I think the noises coming from government, 5-day only isolation, stopping routine testing in non-critical jobs, this is the way forward. This will get us out of it.
Yes, OK. I've got a couple of questions for you. I'm going to start with one that there was a really interesting clip of Sajid Javid patrolling a hospital, asking some medics there how they felt about things like mandatory vaccinations for them. And there was a doctor who said, look, I've had COVID twice, I've got all the antibodies, I am unvaccinated. There are plenty of people, he said anyway, in a similar situation at his particular hospital, and that they didn't want the kind of mandatory vaccination for it. He also said as well about the fact that the idea of constantly testing these medics, then they have to keep going into isolation. He said that you'd have to give them a booster jab a month, pretty much, if you wanted them to have something like, anything like enough immunity to not have a staff shortage, which they're not going to do. Are we now just getting towards a point where we have to just write this thing off as much as we can?
No, you're right. I saw the clip. It's great. You know, I'm a great believer in vaccination. I get it as soon as I can. I always queue up. 8 in the morning, I'm there at the door of the hospital to get my shot. But, you know, we've got to respect different people's opinion, and there is no hard fact. I mean, the conspiracy guys are crazy. I mean, the 5G masks and the Bill Gates controlling us, knowing where we are by putting chips in the vaccination. This is crazy. But, you know, some people genuinely don't want to be vaccinated, and we've got to sort of embrace that. We've got to allow that to happen. And in any vaccination program, there is no need for 100% of the population to be vaccinated. You need about 80 or 90%, and that does the job. You get the herd immunity that we heard about at the beginning of the pandemic. So, you know, people are entitled to their own opinion. I bet the health minister was a bit shocked having the consultant anaesthetist tell him he doesn't believe in vaccination. I've got colleagues that don't, and I respect their opinion, and they respect mine. And that's how we've got to go forward. This will end without 100% of the population being vaccinated.
We talk a lot about vaccinations, right? But another element to this is the testing and lateral flows, etc., etc., etc. But I want to pick your brains a bit about these PCR tests, right? Because I've kind of come to realise recently that if you have had COVID, right, within about 90 days, so which is a long period of time, there is an increased chance that you will test positive on a PCR test. Am I right in saying because you've got the antibodies? Just talk me through this, because if that is the case, that does seem like quite a flawed testing system.
Yeah, both the PCR and the lateral flow don't test for live viruses. In other words, dead viruses will turn up positive in both the PCR and the lateral flow. And that's bedeviling the whole thing. It's screwing up the validity of it all. And the time to take dead virus to clear varies from one person to another. You may remember 6 months ago, there were 3 boys, late teenage boys, stuck in Italy. They wouldn't allow them out of a hotel room in isolation. They couldn't get back to the UK because the Italian authorities wouldn't let them out because they kept testing positive. And it was dead virus. And eventually they got out, but they had to wait 3 weeks in a hotel room. And that's just a misunderstanding. PCR is more sensitive than lateral flow, but in other words, the virus will persist on a PCR test compared to a lateral flow. But at the end of the day, you know, we're all taught as medical students, don't do tests when you've got no treatment. And that's exactly what you've got with this. There's nothing you do with a positive patient other than tell them to isolate. And we're going to get out of that soon. Positive people won't have to isolate by summer. And I think we just have to be a bit more mature about how we go forward and sort of embrace this endemicity, if you like. The road to endemicity is slow and hard, but we've got to get there. This is a bad time of year. It will get better. The warm weather will come back again, despite the gloom of your weather forecaster.
Well, thank you so much. Positive words from Professor Carol Sikora, leading British physician with over 50 years experience in medicine and former chief of cancer programme at the WHO.
Gosh, you know, where's he been in government this whole time, eh? That's what I want to know. But anyway, look, it's we are where we are, as they say. Fingers crossed we'll get out of this soon. Now, Anas Sarwar, leader of the Scottish Labour Party, has just delivered his keynote speech, which addressed the issues facing Scotland in 2022.
Yes, for more on what the leader said is our Scottish reporter, Davy Donaldson. Thank you for joining us, Davy. Scottish Labour has been accused of ambivalence towards the union after plans that the party could hold anti-UK, pro-partition candidates in future elections. What do you make of this, Davy?
Well, first of all, just to go to Anas Sarwar's speech, first of all, because he's come out, he's obviously criticised the SNP, calling them arrogant. He had to go at the Conservatives as well for their failures, he says, in Scotland. And he also talked about the NHS. He basically said it's time to rebuild the NHS. We need more staff. We need to totally rebuild the NHS from top to bottom and to make sure that that's a good service going forward, especially during, obviously, the current situation in the pandemic. He also called for young people to be given more opportunity. He said that we need to support entrepreneurs and things like that. And also he talked about digital as well. He says we're in a digital age and that certainly needs more direction. But certainly a big swipe at the SNP there. I mean, you really would think nothing less. Of course, that's what he's going to say, but certainly a huge swipe at them there, and talked about, you know, turning the corner, whether that's turning the corner in terms of the pandemic or whether it's turning the corner for the Labour Party in Scotland. Well, that remains to be seen.
Yes, 100% does remain to be seen. It's an interesting setting that you've got behind you there. Actually, sorry, just quickly, where exactly are you? I can't quite see on the strap actually.
I am on the banks of the River Forth in West Lothian, so
fantastic.
Quite a nice view behind me, although maybe not quite so nice today.
No, maybe not quite so nice today, but no. But look, just talk to us a little bit about this Scottish Labour issue, there, because like you said about the ambivalence towards the union and things like that. Do you think that they are? Is it actually a very small subsection of Scottish politicians now who are actually pro-union, regardless maybe of what the polls say in the public? Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think there are people that are pro-union. Obviously, the SNP are not one of them, but certainly there are politicians here who think along those lines and feel that it's better to have a union together. Obviously, in Scotland, a country like Scotland, that with such an SNP majority, then you've got the other side of the fence where people, or some people, want to be independent, and that's something obviously Nicola Sturgeon keeps going on about, keeps trying to get independence. Whether that's going to happen, well, I think it's highly unlikely we're going to see any referendum in the near future, given Boris Johnson's response to these calls. Obviously, the SNP will continue to do so, continue to strive for independence, because that is their mantra. But as I say, I don't expect to see any referendum any time in the near future at all.
Davy, thank you very much. Cheers. Great to have you on board. Scottish reporter, of course, Davy Donaldson, just whizzing you through the very latest from Scottish Labour. Yeah,
I think because of COVID, the whole debate about Scottish independence has taken a back seat, but it is a massive issue. The referendum, the last one was in 2014, and that is the platform that Nicola Sturgeon is holding herself onto, and that's the centrepiece of her campaign. But even when we talk about Keir Starmer's speeches and so on, it's going to be incredibly difficult for the Labour Party to win a majority without Scotland.
Yes.
And they are almost, non-existent now in Scotland. So it is quite difficult for them.
And of course, you hate to see it. Right. Well, anyway, after the break, we're going to be doing loads more for you. We'll see an end, of course, to dangerous cladding. Apparently, hopefully, anyway, maybe on buildings. We're also going to be speaking.
This is an issue that really it scares me. I think that the cladding issue needs to be sorted ASAP. It is really a worrying issue.
Oh, massively so, and it is an absolute scandal as well that they're making people potentially anyway pay for the removal of their own cladding. I mean, a lot of people haven't got spare tens and tens and tens of thousands of pounds, have we? But anyway, we will be speaking to a spokesman from End Our Cladding Scandal. But first, I believe we're going to go to the weather, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello again. It's a rather grey Monday for most, with a lot of cloud out there, but it's turning milder, certainly in the west, whereas across much of the east, still quite a chilly feel. but much of the east will stay dry. Further west, it's going to be dank and drizzly thanks to this warm front, but it is, as I say, bringing milder air. So temperatures on the rise across the west, double digits likely here, but a lot of cloud and outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle covering parts of the Midlands, northwest England, particularly western Scotland. Much of eastern England will stay dry, but a bit of drizzle is possible here and there. And further west, it won't rain all day. Parts of Wales, southwest England having some drier spells, but quite soggy in western Scotland, Northern Ireland. But look at the temperatures here, double digits, maybe up to 11 or 12, whereas in the east, just 6 or 7 Celsius. Now, in the east, we'll see temperatures dropping early on, but actually then later in the night as the rain and drizzle pushes in, so the milder air moves in as well. Whereas for Scotland and Northern Ireland, clearer skies here will allow the temperatures to drop. For England and Wales, it will be quite wet, some heavy bursts of rain possible as this thicker cloud continues to drift in, but that will, as I say, keep the temperatures up. A chilly start then for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but a much brighter day here tomorrow. A few showers in the northwest. Quite a grey affair for the Midlands, South Wales, southern and eastern England, with outbreaks of rain, particularly across the southeastern corner, but that will slowly pull away into the afternoon and evening. Brighter skies for northern England, North Wales come the afternoon, some sunshine likely here, but as a result it won't be as mild. It'll turn quite cold quite quickly with these clear skies on Tuesday night across more central parts. We'll still keep a brisk breeze blowing across the north throughout the next 48 hours, actually pretty gusty here. But light winds further south will allow a touch of frost. And increasingly through the rest of this week, we are going to see some dense patches of fog around, but not much in the way of rain through the rest of this week.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
It's 11:24 in the morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Flower Iman and Patrick Christys. We're live on your TV and your radio this morning.
We are indeed. Now, the long nightmare for residents in Grenfell-like tower blocks may be coming to an end finally, as Michael Gove is today expected to announce action on developers who've profited from building unsafe homes. Our London reporter, Alice Porter, is outside Grenfell Tower now, and that's, of course, where this cladding crisis all began, isn't it, really? Alice, thank you very much for joining us. So what's the latest then?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to believe it's 4.5 years ago since the Grenfell fire sadly took the lives of 72 people back in June of 2017. And of course, that incident in on its own was absolutely horrific. But what it also did was reveal a massive housing safety scandal across the country, and that was unsafe cladding, flammable cladding, as well as other fire safety defects that were in tens and thousands of blocks across the country. And the real problem is it cost billions to remove this cladding and other type of materials. Now, the government said that they were going to foot the bill for removing the cladding from the top high-rise flats, but up until now, if you were living in a flat between 11 and 18 metres high, then you were the one who had to foot the bill. And of course, many people feel that is incredibly unfair. Through no fault of their own has this happened. And it is important to stress that there are hundreds of thousands of people across the country who are in this situation, and they've had spiralling insurance costs. They can't sell, they can't remortgage their properties. They're having to pay for 24/7 night wardens to kind of walk around their properties in case there's a fire. I mean, there's a huge mental and emotional toll that has taken on people, as well as, of course, the financial one as well. So I think this move by the government will be welcomed by many people.
And does this move by the government go far enough?
I think many people will say that it won't, because the devil is in the detail here. Michael Gove is going to be asking developers to do the right thing and cough up the £4 billion. That's what he's asked them to do. But the question is, are they going to do the right thing? I mean, a lot of people will say that developers haven't done the right thing up until now. Michael Gove is putting this forward as a sort of voluntary basis. And so for many people, they would say, well, hang on a sec, if they haven't done this yet, why is this going to happen now? And Michael Gove has sort of said if they don't cough up the £4 billion that will be needed towards removing this cladding, then he says he will impose a legislative threat. But I mean, that could be years of wranglings in the courts, and that's already very traumatic for people who've gone through a lot already. And I think also the important point also to stress is this announcement that we're going to get this afternoon from Michael Gove is only in relation to cladding. Now, cladding has, of course, had so many of the sort of headlines over the last sort of couple of years or so, but it's only one sort of piece of the puzzle, really. There are so many other important issues with fire safety issues, such as fire doors, for example. And for those people today, this announcement won't mean anything to them. So I think that's really important to stress, is that it's good news if cladding is the problem in your flat or your block, but it's not so good news if there are other fire safety issues, because they're not being addressed by this funding structure today. And of course, for so many people, they were not going to be waking up today and things are changing overnight. I mean, for many people, they've had years of having to spend a huge amount of money, and all the uncertainty that has come with that. And it's important to stress that although the government, there's been a lot of this tough talk from Michael Gove today in terms of going after these developers and blaming them for the situation that we're in, and whilst that's partly true, it's important to stress that over the last few years of successive governments, we've seen massive deregulation across the housing industry. So I think there are important questions to be asked about the government's role in this one and previous ones, as well as the developers. And I think both those areas will need to be looked at by many members of the public.
Well, indeed. Alice, thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, it is absolutely astonishing that it's been that length of time. I think we can all very vividly remember when that incident took place, really. And I was actually living not too far from there when that took place, and you could kind of almost see it unfold as horrific stuff. But Alice, thank you very much for joining us. Alice Porter there now.
Yes, well, Giles Grover is the co-leader of both Manchester Gladiators and End Our Cladding Scandal campaign, and he is with us now. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Giles. I mean, what do you make of the announcements? Do you welcome some of the announcements in terms of changing some of the rules in terms of paying for cladding changes?
Hi, yeah, good morning. We do welcome the announcement in principle in terms of the fact that the loan scheme that was announced almost a year ago is going to be scrapped, and there is actual grant funding for people in mid-rise buildings. So that's buildings between 11 metres and 18 metres. As Alice says, as has been all over the news the last couple of days, the problem is it's not just cladding. It's not been cladding for a couple of years. The government knows that, and we appreciate that it's that complicated a problem that you're not going to solve it all the time. But again, as many people have said, you can't make buildings half safe. If you don't resolve all the issues, we're going to be trapped. Hopefully not for another 5 years, because it is almost 5 years until the Grenfell anniversary. So we just need some certainty and solidity in our lives. We think we're getting there, but still some way to go.
Yeah, but just talk to me, just really kind of humanise it for our viewers, really, because I actually know roughly around where you're from quite well. And in fact, I believe we might have spoken a couple of times before about this, but the fact is that you're living now in what could potentially be a tinderbox, really, and you've seen how that's taken place, so the effects of what that can be in Grenfell very vividly. And actually, you now potentially have been, expected to cough up all the money yourselves to try and secure it. What's that actually been like?
I don't know where to start, really, because it is, as I say, July 2017 was when I was first told that you're building, there's issues there. We've got the same cladding that was on Grenfell Tower, the ACM cladding. That's still on outside my flat right now. So it's literally on your mind constantly, morning, daytime. I barely slept last night, partly thinking about what Mr. Gove's going to say, but just you're constantly worried, you're consciously anxious, whether it's about the fact that there might be a fire. We've seen a fire in a building in London this morning, that has applied to the Building Safety Fund. So there are chances of it happening. We're aware of numerous fires that seem to happen once every month or so in the Greater Manchester and North West area. So it's people from all walks of life, people of all ages and sizes just feel that we're still trapped, and until Mr. Gove sorts this all out with the help of the Chancellor, we're still going to remain like this in limbo, essentially.
I'll repeat what Michael Gove said. He said the government will not hesitate to introduce a developer's tax to hit those responsible for dangerous cladding. I mean, do you think there needs to be more safety checks and regulations and quality control measures needed for new builds as well?
Well, that's what the Building Safety Bill is intended to bring in. A lot of the issues that successive governments for decades have basically just allowed builders, developers, the wider construction industry, cladding manufacturers to get away with all sorts of bad practice. So, as has been said repeatedly, the only innocent people are the least. So the main thing that we want, and we want to tell Mr. Gove, and we'll keep telling him, that the only way we'll have certainty is if there's legislation in the Building Safety Bill to protect us. There are some good things in the Building Safety Bill that would be helpful for new builds. However, Mr. Gove, and the good thing is that he recognises the government has a number of levers that they can pull to actually get more help, more funding from the developers. They've benefited to the tune of billions and billions from government-assisted taxpayer-backed schemes. It's time that we benefit from those, and the developers and the construction industry are held to account.
Absolutely. Giles, thank you very, very much, and good luck to you, OK? Giles Grovey there, co-leader of both Manchester Gladiators even, sorry about that, and End Our Cladding Scandal campaign. Of course, things need to be rectified very, very quickly there, don't they?
Yes, well, in other news, in Brazil, at least 10 people have died and dozens more are injured after a rock formation tore away from a cliff and slammed onto boats packed with tourists.
We do have some footage, actually, now, as the rock started to fall. So, look, viewer discretion obviously is advised. It's very upsetting, and an unknown number of people are still missing. You can see this footage now. Divers are searching this Furnas Lake. Goodness me, I mean, there you go. You can see, obviously, how that then went on to unfold as well, where divers are searching this lake near the town of São José da Barra. Gosh, it's just terrifying stuff, isn't it?
I mean, it's just scary. I mean, obviously, many of those people were going out to enjoy themselves, spending time with their families. I mean, obviously, they wouldn't, in their wildest dreams, have imagined that something so horrendous had happened.
No, it's got kind of slight similarities with, do you remember in New Zealand when there were a lot of tourists on an island, I believe, that had like a volcano on it, and it just went off without any previous warning, apparently. And, you've got all these tourist boats, haven't you, that are there. But anyway, well, look, after the break, a barrister helps us break down the BBC's coverage of an anti-Semitic attack. The BBC is really facing a lot of strong allegations about that. But before that, let's take a look at this morning's news.
Good morning, it's 11:34. I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date with the latest headlines. Novak Djokovic has won his appeal against deportation, with the judge ruling he did have the required medical exemption to enter the country without a COVID vaccine. But Australia's immigration minister says he reserves the right to exercise personal power to expel the star from the country. Well, in an exclusive interview with GBNews, Dorian Djokovic, the tennis star's uncle, told us his nephew's been treated like an animal. Building developers in the UK have until March of this year to agree a funding plan to replace dangerous cladding on low-rise flats, or they'll be forced to pay with a new tax. The Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, says developers need to start contributing to the estimated £4 billion cost this year. In the US, 19 people, including 9 children, have been killed in an apartment fire in New York City. 60 others were injured, with 13 in a critical condition. 200 firefighters responded to the blaze. Authorities say it was a malfunctioning electric heater that caused the incident. Pregnant women are being urged to get vaccinated against COVID-19 to protect their babies. The Department of Health and Social Care say that nearly all of the pregnant women, 96% of them, who were hospitalised last year between May and October with COVID symptoms, hadn't taken the vaccine. The government says the jabs are safe during pregnancy and have no impact on fertility. Buckingham Palace has unveiled the lineup of celebrations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. It's going to mark her 70 years on the throne with a 4-day UK bank holiday weekend from the 2nd to the 5th of June. It's going to include a platinum pudding competition that's going to be judged by a panel including Dame Mary Berry, street parties, a concert, and also a chance to see the Queen's homes up close. It's 11:36. You are right up to date here on GB News. I'll be back with more on all of today's stories at 12 o'clock.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 11:38 in the morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Anai Flower Iman, and Patrick Christys. We're here live on your TV and radio this morning.
Yes, indeed. Right now, on the 29th of November last year, a group of Jewish children were subjected to an anti-Semitic abuse on a bus in central London. The BBC coverage of the story was absolutely slammed by the Board of Deputies of British Jews, who complained about the alleged reporting of an Islamophobic slur on the bus.
The board disputed that such a slur could be heard. A spokeswoman for the BBC has stated that the corporation will, quote, ensure that the complaints are fully responded to as swiftly as possible. The Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries has written to the broadcaster urging a satisfactory resolution.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's just speak now to Natasha Hausdorff, a barrister at Six Pump Court and legal director of UK Lawyers for Israel Charitable Trust. Welcome to the programme, Natasha. Thank you very, very much. Just explain to us the latest legal goings-on. Last week, I think it was Friday, actually, I did an opening monologue on this story. We guested it as well. We had someone from the Jewish Chronicle on, and a couple of other people as well. So what's the legal latest then?
Well, good morning, Patrick. UK Lawyers for Israel is a voluntary association of lawyers working to combat anti-Semitism and attacks on Israel, as in this case of the BBC's reporting. And the potential claim here concerns the BBC's breach of the Equality Act by discriminating on the grounds of religion or race. Now, there were unfortunately several serious issues with the reporting. The claim by the BBC that there were racial slurs about Muslims has been resoundingly debunked by every other organisation that has reviewed the footage. But it's seriously concerning that the claim of anti-Muslim racial slurs was reported as if it was undisputed fact, without any qualification whatsoever. And by contrast, the real abuse, which was anti-Semitic, was only reported as the subject of allegation. Now, the BBC has also reported that the incident was being looked at by the police in its entirety, which is an innuendo that an alleged anti-Muslim slur amounted to a criminal offence or in some way justified the anti-Semitic abuse. Now, sadly, this level of appalling bias at the BBC is nothing new, and it's well known that the corporation has spent tens of thousands of pounds suppressing the Bailyn report into bias with respect to the BBC's coverage on Israel. And we've also recently seen Lord Dyson's damning report about the cover-up culture at the BBC. There are some serious questions to answer here. And on top of this, there's the obfuscation and lack of transparency of the complaints procedure, which is simply meaningless. Those in the Jewish community have no confidence in the BBC's complaints process, or sadly in Ofcom, where appeals to Ofcom are to a content board where 10 out of the 14 members are former BBC staff. And in fact, the BBC's failure to take the steps requested of it by lawyers associated with UKLFI in relation to the reporting of this incident suggests that it is banking on there being no proper investigation of its conduct in relation to this report.
As well, I mean, you hit rightly on the nail on the head there when you said about the saying, oh, allegedly this bunch of anti-Semitic attack. Well, I mean, there's nothing allegedly about a Nazi salute, which is clearly visible in one of those clips, for example. But so what could actually happen to the BBC now? What could happen if these legal complaints kind of come off?
Well, if the steps requested of the BBC aren't carried out, and that is an investigation by a senior individual at the corporation, and if indeed it is found as a result of that investigation that the BBC was wrong to unreservedly apologise and compensate those affected, then there could well be a claim arising out of it, as I indicated, for the breach. But I think this needs to be viewed very much in the context of the overall impression that the Jewish community have of the BBC's bias. Now, you mentioned the Nazi salutes that have been reported as part of this attack. The other element of the attack are a metal basket being lobbed onto the top deck, which was uncovered of this bus, which miraculously didn't land on any of the individuals that were there. Chants of Free Palestine from the racist abusers on the street, and indeed the playing of songs that have been identified as belonging to the terrorist organisation Hamas. So you have here the conflagration of intense anti-Israel sentiment and anti-Semitism masquerading in that form.
Thank you very much for bringing us an update on this anti-Semitism scandal at the BBC, Natasha Housdorf, a barrister at Six Pump Court and legal director of UK Lawyers for Israel Charitable Trust. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Interesting, though, isn't it? They said that they are banking on there not being a particularly proper BBC investigation, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yes, well, in other news, friends and relatives of online daters are being urged to help protect them from romantic frauds, as the period from Christmas to Valentine's Day is the most dangerous for falling into love traps, apparently.
Yeah, you'd fall into a dangerous love trap. Anyway, there we go. Well, nearly £92 million was lost by hopeless romantics in scams last year. Surely not.
Well, I mean, I do hear a lot of scams, you know, in relation to, 419 in Nigeria. You know, they pretend to, fall in love with somebody, and then, and therefore, they get a lot of women get trapped into this. There's been lots of stories about this, so I'm not surprised.
Yes, well, there is, of course, a serious side to this as well. As I said, their £92 million was lost by hopeless romantics in scams last year. And Dr. Hannah Shimko is the Communications and Policy Director of Online Dating Association. And indeed, there she is. £92 million. How on earth are people losing this amount of money even to, Cupid's not firing his arrows in the right direction, surely?
Good morning, and thanks for having me on. No, exactly. And it's, as you said, people are vulnerable when they're looking for love, and it's easy to fall into the kind of, I suppose, traps sent by scammers. When you're looking for that kind of support in love.
Yeah. And also, I mean, what advice would you give to those in risk of falling into an expensive love trap?
So yeah, we have a set of tips that we talk about over and over again for online daters. First is think about getting to know the person, not the profile. So you should be able to maybe video chat and then meet the person in person on a real date. That will help they're real. It's really important to stay on the dating service. So you might use an app or a website. Don't necessarily go on WhatsApp or messaging, because on websites and apps there are processes in place to look for scams, to look for fraud, places where you can report these issues. We really encourage daters to stay on the website or app. Never send money online to anyone you've not met, and I think that speaks directly to the issue here around fraud. Is don't be sending money to anyone you haven't met. Don't necessarily fall for or get involved with someone who said they need money for something that seems realistic, but could not be. And I think there's a lot written on that daters should look into. And of course, this campaign talking a lot about talking to your friends and family. So friends and family should know you really well. They'll be able to look for patterns of behavior that are changing. They can be encouraging. They can listen. They can talk to you about things that might seem strange. Encourage online daters to maybe take a break from messaging. We know that scammers often use something called love bombing, which is where they're really engaged and really loving and there for you, and then suddenly it turns from being loving to being manipulative. So those are things that friends and family can watch out for, and to just think about not being pressured into doing anything.
And Hannah, I mean, what are some of the people? Is there like a demographic of people that many of these scammers prey on? Because it's been something that we've been seeing for a number of years now. And I mean, most people would assume if you're never spoken to someone, that you've never really met, them telling you they love you, and then all of a sudden asking for hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds would be a bit suspect. But people, unfortunately, are still making that error. I mean, are there types of people that these scammers seem to prey on if they think they're more likely to succumb to this?
Yeah, I think it's anyone who is vulnerable, and I think that can mean any broad age range, gender. It doesn't really matter. There's no profile, but it's someone who is in that space where they are feeling lonely. And as you said in the introduction, this time period between Christmas and Valentine's Day, people kind of are on their own. They've been on their own at Christmas, maybe want to be with someone by Valentine's Day, and they're searching for love, and that's the easiest time to prey on someone when they're really looking for that.
And I mean, look, I know personally from various things I did maybe as a local reporter, and you have to report on various things. A lot of elderly people are a victim to this, and it's not just on romantic apps, is it? There are other apps out there. There are other little games. There's things like online, believe it or not, things like online Scrabble and this. Those games with chat features where they get infiltrated as well by people, don't they? I mean, it really is everywhere.
No, it is, and as you say, any kind of messaging service can lead to romance and dating, which is why we say if you're looking for love, do it on an online dating website or app, which we have lots of moderation practices in place to watch for questionable messages, reminding daters not to send money, not to send pictures, things like that. So I'd be very, very much warning people to not think about romantic outcomes from any kind of online messaging apps that aren't designed for romance.
Indeed. Well, look, thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Hannah Shimko there, the Communications and Policy Director of the Online Dating Association. I think, it is easily done for people to be scammed, isn't it? But I do think increasingly now in this day and age, gone are the days where you used to get a letter from someone maybe in a certain part of the world, directed to an elderly lady who says that, if you just give me £10,000 now, I can release the funds from your great uncle's bank account, which has 25 million in it. There was times when people did fall for that, but you shouldn't really be doing it now.
Yeah, but, I do really think that the pandemic may well have exacerbated it. I mean, loneliness was a really big problem even before the pandemic, and that has been re-entrenched over the last 2 years. And I think perhaps a lot of people are really lonely if you're vulnerable, like was mentioned, potentially elderly, and you just want someone to speak to. And, sometimes people can be, convinced that actually giving this person money, they'll give them love, they'll give them attention. And I actually think it's an indictment of a society that hasn't got those kinds of strong bonds which can protect people against those kinds of things.
Oh, yes. Well, it's very true. It's very true. And it's not just romantic fraud, it's fraud in general, isn't it? I can remember covering a story about this woman who was in her 90s, cleaned out by this guy who actually stayed on the phone with her, stayed on the mobile phone with her, walked her to her bank, and made her transfer the funds into a different account. And
well, these people are very manipulative. I mean, many of them are, psychological abusers, effectively, and are able to prey on people.
Exactly. And it's very tricky to get that money back sometimes as well, isn't it?
Almost impossible sometimes.
Well, look, moving away now. At least 34 people were rescued on Saturday after they'd been stranded on a large chunk of floating ice off the shore of Point Comfort, ironically, on Green Bay in the US.
Yes, the chunk of ice had broken off from the shoreline with all the people still on it, but everyone was rescued within 2 hours with no injuries, thankfully, according to the release from the Brown County Sheriff's Office.
Well, it doesn't look like it was going to thaw anytime soon, to be fair, does it? But, I mean, goodness me.
It's a bit of positive news. They were all safe. None of them had any injuries.
How do you think you feel, though? You just...
Yeah, but
I'll be
definitely
terrified.
An experience, a memory.
Well, it is a memory, that's for sure. Definitely. Right, the supermarket Morrison's is scrapping use-by dates on most of its milk. Instead, it's asking buyers to use a sniff test to check it's not off. There you go.
I mean, I kind of do that.
I do that.
If you know the smell, I think we've evolved to be able to sense that.
Absolutely. Having said that, of course, some people can maybe have lost their sense of smell due to COVID and then just go around. Well, there's
will they have a use by? Are they going to keep the use by? That's the question I want to know.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, but I do think there was a time where we were all doing a lot of things talking about use by dates, sell by dates, and things like that, and how much food we were wasting. And even people that were like CEOs of some of our big supermarkets were like, yeah, the use by date is just basically a bit irrelevant. Just look at it. Is it off?
No, but it's really weird. So they're scrapping the use by, but they're keeping the best before. I mean, surely it would make sense to do it the other way around. You would keep the use by, but leave out the best before.
I don't know. Also, why, really? I mean, it's a strange one, isn't it? So they're going to keep that, but it will encourage, apparently, the customer to check the product to try and stop pints being poured down the drain. So to stop wasting milk is what they're thinking of doing it. It's the third most wasted food and drink product in the UK.
Poor cows.
Poor cows.
Yeah, they've had their milk taken away for their babies.
Yeah.
They're pouring it down the drain.
And they are 490 million pints wasted every single year. That's according to food charity RAM. That is a lot of milk.
I mean, I've heard some crazy statistics when it comes to waste, and I do think, sometimes the green agenda does seem to go too far, but I would like to see more combating of waste, making sure there's not air pollution. We're doing more in relation to recycling, and I think that's very good to live in a society that cares about those things.
No, absolutely. That is rather a lot of milk, that's for sure. But anyway, for the first time, Buckingham Palace has unveiled the lineup of celebrations to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. So what have we got?
Oh, street parties, a concert and a chance to see the Queen's homes up close are all included in the programme to mark her 70 years on the throne. Amazing.
Yeah, the Duchess of Cambridge. The Duchess of Cambridge also marked her 40th birthday, didn't she, by releasing 3 new photographs showing the sophisticated glamour of our future Queen. But I think it's a look, isn't it, that a real Hollywood A-lister would be proud of.
Oh, burn.
There you go. Just drop that one in. I thought it was all right. She does look resplendent, though, doesn't she?
Yeah, I mean, I think this Platinum Jubilee could be a good moment to unify the country.
Yes.
Brexit and then COVID has caused a lot of division within society, and I think the Queen may well be the one thing within society that actually cuts across political and ideological divides, and many people, monarchy supporter or not, have a lot of respect for the Queen.
Fingers crossed. I mean, I hope so. I really hope so,
I thought you'll be like, flag waving about it.
Well, I am really, but I just really think that, the Queen has just been an absolute rock throughout all of this, really. And I think she's been fundamentally let down recently by so many different elements of her family and so many of her relatives. And I think, I feel so sorry for her, really, at the moment, but I don't know, I suppose then there is going to be a good look around a lot of her houses, isn't there? And then maybe I feel slightly less sorry for her when I see the luxury inside the castle. But I don't know. Look, I do feel for her. But we're getting towards the end here now, aren't we? That's basically it. Basically it from us here at To The Point. Thank you very much, everyone, who has been messaging in and emailing in throughout the show. I think we'll just finish with a final word from you guys. David's been in touch on our romance scams. He says, it reminds me of the Beatles' Can't Buy Me Love. There we go, right? And a lot of people as well saying that they must say that they do think the BBC does happen to have some questions to answer when it comes to its reporting of that anti-Semitic incident on Oxford Street in London. I am Jewish and I've always found the BBC's coverage to be questionable, and that's from Nigel.
Well, that is it from us here at To The Point. But don't go away, because next up we have The Briefing with Gloria De Piero. Thank you for watching.
See you tomorrow.
Hello again. It's a rather grey Monday for most, with a lot of cloud out there, but it's turning milder, certainly in the west, whereas across much of the east, still quite a chilly feel. But much of the east will stay dry. Further west, it's going to be dank and drizzly thanks to this warm front, but it is, as I say, bringing milder air. So temperatures on the rise across the west, double digits likely here, but a lot of cloud and outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle covering parts of the Midlands, northwest England, particularly western Scotland. Much of eastern England will stay dry, but a bit of drizzle is possible here and there. And further west, it won't rain all day. Parts of Wales, southwest England having some drier spells, but quite soggy in western Scotland, Northern Ireland. But look at the temperatures here, double digits, maybe up to 11 or 12, whereas in the east, just 6 or 7 Celsius. Now, in the east, we'll see temperatures dropping early on, but actually then later in the night as the rain and drizzle pushes in, so the milder air moves in as well. Whereas for Scotland and Northern Ireland, clearer skies here will allow the temperatures to drop. For England and Wales, it will be quite wet, some heavy bursts of rain possible as this thicker cloud continues to drift in, but that will, as I say, keep the temperatures up. A chilly start then for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but a much brighter day here tomorrow. A few showers in the northwest. Quite a grey affair for the Midlands, South Wales, southern and eastern England, with outbreaks of rain, particularly across the southeastern corner, but that will slowly pull away into the afternoon and evening. Brighter skies for northern England, North Wales come the afternoon, some sunshine likely here, but as a result it won't be as mild. It'll turn quite cold quite quickly with these clear skies on Tuesday night across more central parts. We'll still keep a brisk breeze blowing across the north throughout the next 48 hours, actually pretty gusty here. But light winds further south will allow a touch of frost. And increasingly through the rest of this week, we are going to see some dense patches of fog around, but not much in the way of rain through the rest of this week.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah.